Welcome to Conscious Conversations. Tonight's conversation is with Shara Mocsinska. I did my talk with her while she was on campus this week, so we're not coming to you live tonight, but it just made the most sense for us to get together and talk while she was actually on campus. And if you watched the service last week, you know that there were several points that I don't usually make notes during talks, but her talk just prompted me to make notes about some of the issues that she brought up, some of the deeply meaningful things that she brought to my attention. And then, of course, the big one being the huge synchronicity that we had around hummingbirds. And everyone, we just crave those synchronicities, and especially when it's so noticeable with someone else. So I'm so happy to have her tonight to explore a little bit more about that really fascinating hummingbird synchronicity. So we'll start with our poem tonight. This poem is a translation by Jane Hirschfield, who is an ordained Buddhist priest, and it's a poem by a Buddhist poet, Rabia, and I think you'll know why I picked it. The poem is, "Oh my Lord, if I worship you from fear of hell, burn me in hell. If I worship you from hope of paradise, bar me from its gates. But if I worship you for yourself alone, grant me then the beauty of your face." So let's begin tonight with prayer. And I borrowed this prayer from Paulette Pipe, who's been a guest on this show. And I want you to read along with me because it's a little bit long, but it has some lovely thoughts in it for the month of January. I stride forward with confidence and courage into the new panorama that is this new year. I am no longer held hostage in the recesses of my own mind by residual energy from past hurts, pain, or uncomfortable experiences. Any energy from these unresolved issues, which may be lodged in my body at cellular level, now dissipate. I am free to thrive. I look back over my shoulder, not to lament or retreat back into what was, but to scoop up the cumulative benefits and blessings from every single difficulty encountered. Each incident contains a lesson, a gift that forms a sturdy foundation upon which I can stand, grow, and evolve in consciousness. I choose to trust that I have within me whatever it takes to create a new reality, a new normal, and I courageously allow new possibilities to emerge for me through divine grace. So most of us that have been in unity for a while understand that unity is based on affirmative prayer. And Reverend Pipe makes an interesting point, I think, that's worth remembering, even if you've been saying affirmative prayers for years. It's a helpful analogy to bear in mind. While stating an affirmation, we experience resistance that says, "I don't believe this," or "this isn't true." We've all had that feeling where when we say, for example, "I am prosperous," and we have that little voice that says, "No, you're not. You're not prosperous. Look at your bank statement." But her point is, just remember, it's simply a clearing process to replace the negative with the positive. And she uses this beautiful analogy of pouring clear water into a muddy glass. And gradually, as you pour this clear water in, the water as a whole becomes clear. So even though most of you remember our beloved Reverend Lois, she would always say, say affirmative prayer and say it with all your heart. It doesn't mean your mind isn't going to come in and say, that's not true. But you'll find as you do this more and more that your mind, the power of your mind to sort of sabotage, let's say, because that's what it's trying to do, will fade even more. Affirmative prayer can be a very powerful tool to use, not to cajole, beseech, or impress a God of our understanding, but to change our perception of a situation and any false beliefs or limiting ideas we may hold about it or ourselves. Prayer changes everything because it changes us. What a beautiful message. Paulette Pipe's prayers, if you haven't seen them, go online and enter her name and you'll find all kinds of prayers of hers. She's just one of those people that can pray with such power that you're just transformed listening to her. So I just want to thank her for allowing me to borrow this poem. And so here is our conversation with Shara Mocsinska. And we had a conversation about a number of things. It's a little rambling because we talked about liminality, which was the subject of her talk last week. And if you haven't heard that talk, I'm going to send an email with the link to it because it's a two-part talk. And if you haven't seen last Sunday's, before we get to this Sunday, I'd really love for you to listen to it because there's some incredibly powerful things about the journey that our particular spiritual community has been on. It's very interesting that Shara's new eyes, because she brings new eyes to the situation. And sometimes when you're in something, when you're really in it, it's difficult to get perspective, but she offers a perspective about the journey of our community. And probably the best news about it is that she offers that we may not be there yet, but we're definitely on the road. So let's begin our talk with Shara. Shara, it's so wonderful to see you tonight. Now, I know everyone knows that you are going to be here through Monday, so we're doing this in advance of our Wednesday night rollout, but that's okay, because you've been here now for it's almost been a week, right? Or is today a week?
6 days, so
6
just
days.
about.
Okay. And so how has your experience been? We didn't have the best weather for you, I guess I wouldn't say, but how have you spent your time?
It's been wonderful. I'm right here in Hummingbird House now, and I just noticed for all the Zoom meetings, this is a lovely backdrop. We've got the bougainvillea in the background, and it's really been lovely. My intention for this trip is to get acclimated to the space, to the campus, and to meet and have some meaningful conversations with as many of the ministry members as I can. And that's been going really, really well. And then tomorrow's supposed to be a nice day, and there's a meetup to do this big bike ride down by Dana Point, taking a ferry somewhere. So I'm going to check it out, and we'll see how it goes.
You're quite the adventurer, aren't you?
I do. I love to travel. I love to explore. I love new experiences. So
right.
This is a great place to do it.
Yes, and it's just like anything, it's new to you because you've lived now in New Mexico for several years, I think.
Yeah.
And that's kind of clipped your wings a little.
Well, that and children and family and different developmental stages of life.
Right.
In my 20s, I lived in Poland, and I'd put on a backpack, and the next morning I'd be in Prague, or, I mean, it was a different way of being. And that was one stage. And that has its lessons and it has its limitations. And and being a family person has its lessons and limitations. My girls are teenagers now, so there's a little bit more room for all of us to stay connected as a family and individuate in a different way as well. So maybe I'm going through my second teenagerhood with my girls.
Well, I think there probably is a lot of truth to that. We just have different phases in our lives, which, this is really sort of the segue into what it means to be in this liminal space, because every one of these shifts in life, every one of these different periods of our lives generally comes with this liminal space, right? And I think of the Unity minister, Ellen Davenport, who is now at Unity Village. She's in charge of something. I don't exactly know what, but she wrote a book about, God closes a window, or God, closes a door and opens a window, but it's hell in the hallway or something like that. And I want to talk about this liminal space being that hell in the hallway. Because that's the way we humans kind of experience it, right?
Mm-hmm. It's I think it is. I think it's inherently uncomfortable to be in the unknown, to be out of control, to give up the security of knowing what to do in a way that we're beyond reproach, because there's a vulnerability. When we're in liminal space, when we're moving from one way of being to the other, we don't know what we're doing. So we're going to make mistakes. And if our sense of self is ultra dependent on external validation, and we, as far as I know, we all have it to some degree, that process is so very difficult, and this is why our unity principles and our spiritual practice is so important, so that even when we take the leap of faith and step onto the bridge with the faith that will appear as we step, that's because we're also connected to something larger while we're in our human vulnerability. And I think that's the quality of liminal space, and it's the way that emergence happens. It's the way that evolution happens. And it's important to develop the capacity to tolerate it. It's not the only way we grow and evolve. We can grow and evolve through much easier ways. but it's an inevitable way. So we need to know how to tolerate the terrain.
Yes. So, I wonder if we could talk a little about, and I want to use a better word than coping with being in liminal space, because I think for myself, and I can, I'm sure I'm not that unusual, that being in liminal space brings up a lot of anxiety. It brings up a lot of feelings of, I should know what to do. I should know the next step I'm going to take. That makes me look incompetent. It makes me look empty-brained or whatever. And yet I've learned, sometimes the hard way, I've learned that this liminal space is an opportunity to sort of say, to let go and let God, to really let go and let God. And we think we're doing such a good job of that, right? We pat ourselves on the back, I'm doing that. But until something really, that honestly pushed me to say, I cannot do this. You know how they say, God never gives you anything you can't handle? Oh, I so disagree with that, because the greatest gift was when I had something I could not handle. And therefore, I had no choice but to really, really, really deeply surrender.
That's correct. Because if we're not led to these experiences, we're not going to willingly choose them. Like you're the hallway is hell. And It's interesting. We started by talking about different developmental stages of life.
Yeah.
And I think there's different developmental stages of organizational development too. And they're going to require a different leadership model. So if there is an organization that's really in its sweet spot, really resonant with the collective, and the norm is working, you probably want someone to come in and say, okay, this is how we do it. This is how the other person did it. Let's keep doing it this way. It works. And kind of have that more on a spiral dynamics model, the orange kind of success achievement oriented meme and value kind of guiding. But I'm new to this community, so I'm really a listener. And in the unity movement, out in the life cycle of an organization, you've got birth, and then plateau, and then decline, and then death. And in that decline stage, there needs to be a renewal. Otherwise, we tend to continue to decline. And there is a decline in our movement, in numbers and finances, which for me, if I didn't know in my heart that our message and teaching and support was so relevant to the collective, if I did not see the hunger for so many hearts for what we offer, maybe the life cycle is time to come to an end. That's a natural rhythm of things. But I really believe that what this world needs is more attention to consciousness, self-consciousness, and God consciousness. These terrains that don't have easy answers, that you can't experiment and get proof, and that you have to learn. Actually, the spaces themselves are a bit liminal. So, I really feel like as a movement, we really need to listen to what is no longer interfacing and resonating with the collective, and then how to listen to what's needed to inform us on how to change so that we can be of deeper service. And that's a different type of leadership, because this is not leadership where expertise is it's needed. Some expertise is needed, but we can't rely on it completely, or we won't be open to listen to what the divine through the emerging future is asking us to become. And that's where we are in our movement, and likely that's where we are in this community as well.
Well, I think we've all seen, at least I know I've seen in my lifetime. I grew up in a Catholic family, in the Catholic Church, and I went to Catholic school for 12 years. And during that time, if you didn't like the priest, or you didn't like what was going on, there was just virtually nowhere for no one. First of all, they didn't really care. But secondly of all, there was no forum for that. Maybe you went home and you said, boy, I really didn't care for that, or I didn't like that. But people aren't like that anymore. There isn't any feeling anymore. And I'm sure you could point to a lot of things that have made that shift in society. But what you're talking about, I think, is exactly that people want to have input. They expect to have input. And, I've learned that people want to be heard. They don't necessarily expect that you're going to do it their way, but they expect to be heard. And when you have an organization like a church, it's especially incumbent on the leadership to say, this is this path we're planning on. What do you think? Or what is your feedback? There's a lot of listening involved, a lot of listening, and a lot of, from your study of the spiral dynamics, the green meme where people are everybody's right and everybody has an opinion, but we don't move, we don't do anything, because this opinion's this and that opinion's that. It has to be synthesized, and we have to choose a certain path. And that's why being in this liminal space is, to me, it's a listening time, really. Listen, not only inner, outer listening, but inner listening and saying, I don't know, which really leads me to our model that we had for so long of, you call it the pastoral model. And if you could sort of describe, just to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about, what is the pastoral model?
Yeah, so, you've talked a little bit about kind of the evolution of why we go to church. So you and I was raised Catholic. We went to church for blue meme value system reasons.
Right.
It had who cared if you were nourished? You had to check the box. I went to church this Sunday, and therefore I was in right alignment with God. Right. And that's not the case in our movement, in our community. Now it's very much about really participation. There's a participatory relationship to community, and there is a need and a very valid and understandable and incredibly important need to get nourished and to nourish back. And it's messier, it's more interdependent, it's more diverse. We need more voices. Yet, if we look at the typical model of smaller church ministries, it's the pastoral model, which is actually a little bit more like the blue model, where you've got, one main minister or sometimes a couple as like the senior ministers, and it works very well. However, it has the hierarchy can be a bit stark, and there sometimes isn't as much room for kind of mutual equality and leadership and all of that I think so much of us are hungry for, and that develop very dynamic, vibrant communities. And what happens in these models is sometimes they can work super well, but often it's because of the relationship and the personality and the charisma and the skill, even sometimes the amazing skill of the spiritual leader. So there could be a really, really wonderful success. But then if that person leaves, then the organization might go up and down, up and down, up and down, because it's very minister-centric. It's kind of another way to put as a pastoral model. And what we're moving into more and more in the unity movement and in many institutions is a mission and value-centric model. So that's where everyone, everything, all policies, it's like, well, should we do this? Should we do that? You talked about the difficulty making decisions. Well, if we come up with a set of values as a community where everyone does have input, then that could be our benchmark to inform decision making. Well, is that decision in alignment with our values that we came up with as a community? So then there's almost there's some coherence in what emerges from that. And then even the ministers and the leaders in the church and everyone who steps up in service, it's all to support the mission and the values. So that is what's leading to the success and dynamism of the community. So if one person steps away, in theory, and I think in practice, when you have more voices and more participation, there's going to be less disruption and less volatility. And it's a bit of a different model. There's more, there's flatter hierarchies, there's more dynamism, there's a way that the community itself is a playing field for people to follow inspiration and step out in spiritual leadership in the community or even in their own life, using the community for support. It kind of, it blends action and contemplation. And it's an emergent organization where there's room for new things to come. It's a little bit more dynamic because this internal structure is a bit more flexible.
Well, because what I've noticed is, being in liminal space when you are coming out of that pastoral model, we didn't even know what we were, whether we were coming out of it or going back to it or whatever. But for a long time, being in the liminal space, we as an organization, I'm speaking, you know, for the whole at this point, there were just any number of opinions about, you know, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, and that's all fine. But what's come out of this, though, is this emerging model, which we don't, you know, you mentioned, and this really stuck with me, you mentioned on Sunday, we're not there yet, but we're on the road, which made me feel very excited and happy, because when you're not even on the road and you don't know where the road is, it starts to feel so unstable. But at least if we can say, we're on the road, we're going to make course corrections as we go along, I'm sure, but we kind of know where we're headed. And, you know, the example that I thought of, I talked with somebody about this morning, in the olden days, it used to be that there was a hit record, maybe there'd be a hit record for the summer, and everybody loved that song, and everybody played that song, and they played it over and over on the radio. It's not like that anymore. There's this kind of music, and those people go over here, and there's that kind of music, and those people go there. Well, it's the same thing with our situation. We have people for whom Reiki, for example, is something that they're very, that just deeply resonates with them. There are other people that couldn't care less about that. There are people that want the Enneagram, or there are people who want spiral dynamics, or they're looking for something more experiential, whether it's sound bath or whatever. Well, now that we've kind of seen that this is where the sweet spot might be, in that kaleidoscope of offerings, using your word kaleidoscope, which I want to talk more about, but it feels like we're responding to that, you know, sort of what is part of our culture now.
I think you said it so well, Mary Jean. I think that's true. If we look at a green organization and the emphasis on multiculturalism and inclusivity, then it does make sense that there's going to be different voices of spirit also offered on a fairly regular basis. And, you know, having the spiritual ministry team, in a way, it's, you know, not such a big leap, but in a way, it's an enormous leap, because I don't know anyone else who's doing it.
Right.
And it is an experiment, you know, and I think that's important, because even for people in the community who aren't sure, or maybe would prefer that we did have another pastoral model, nothing is set in stone. I think with the best intentions, the board is trying to put something forward that hopefully will meet the needs of the community, and also just some practical things. You know, starting a spiritual ministry search in kind of the very traditional way during times of COVID, where everything would have to be online, and then more space in between in the unknown after this community's been there for 3 years. You know, it was almost like there might have been a little urgency to let us get something on board, do our very, very best, and trust spirit in the process, see how it works, but almost expect a lot of course correction as we all find our way to make sure that the needs of the multiplicity is met as much as possible. And some of those needs are going to want something a little more familiar, you know, and then some of those needs are going to want something less familiar. Mm-hmm. So there's really a lovely intelligence in this model, and it's new, and they'll need to be course correcting and tweaking as we all find our way.
And we know that we're uniquely positioned. The one of the main advantages that Unity of Tustin has is we are uniquely positioned to be that organizing principle, let's say, for this kind of ministry. And in Orange County, there's no one else doing this. Not that I am aware of, and I think I would be aware. So when we get out of COVID, when we start to come out of this COVID period, I can see where we can begin to be that space for people. And it's going to require us to change, continue changing, but I think the good news is we're getting this space, we're getting this time and space to begin to build the foundation for this kind of thing, right? It's not like we have to do it today. We get a little time, we get a little space, we get a chance to practice, so we can make these mistakes. I admit that's been difficult for me, to be in a space of saying, yeah, that didn't go perfectly, or we're still learning that, and be all right with it. Because I think, like most people, I was certainly raised to believe you want to avoid those mistakes, instead of looking at them as a learning experience. We don't want any more learning experiences when we get to a certain point, right? It's like, I've had a lot of learning experiences. So, and I just want to talk for a minute about the kaleidoscope image, because that was another image that you used in your, was there a particular reason that you picked that? Is that a word that has resonance?
You know, it's an image I've had for many years that to me is a great metaphor for the evolution of life. And especially if we see the kaleidoscope as alive. So it's not just reconfiguration, but with every turn, there's an opportunity for some new energy to get in there, to create a third way or a new emergence or something new. So then it's kind of this design of evolving spiral that keeps going. And that is part of the deal. You know, that is the way emergence works. We have a beautiful design. You know, there's a period of harmony. Everyone can take heart that in all processes of change, there's always a time where the kaleidoscope does come to a still point. And then we learn and we play in that area with minor course corrections, and then it keeps going, and then it keeps going. And that there's a way we can welcome that experience once we know that that is the map of that's normal. And when we look at the map of consciousness evolution.
Yeah. And when you said kaleidoscope, I thought of something in my past where a wise person said to me, you know, life's like a kaleidoscope. You just turn it ever so slightly and everything looks different. And I think that's something we think we have to make these huge wholesale changes where everything is, you know, scorched earth. We don't have to do that. We just have to make some little changes. And the world sometimes sees
that's kind of our unity interpretation of the word repent in the Bible. Yeah. So, you know, repent is a terrible translation. It's really metanoia, which is change your consciousness. You know, turn your consciousness. Just turn your viewpoint just a little, and you will be able to see with such greater clarity and expansion. Yes. And that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I very first came to Unity, it was so different from anything, my original conditioning and everything. And I first heard about, you don't have to forgive, just be willing. Just be willing to forgive. Yes. And I thought, what? But the willingness, right? The willingness to do something, you don't have to do all this other stuff if you're just willing, because that's what the universe is looking for, that little space to just kind of ease in there. And so I think that's exactly what the kaleidoscope is like. It's just this little shift of willingness opens a lot of doors. Like you were talking about, what's the term that you said? Gary Simmons uses?
Oh, yeah. So that is kind of part of this vulnerability that we're talking about, the vulnerability of liminal space. What that allows is for the new consciousness to come in. Because when we are doing things the way it's always been done, the past and the future are going to be an extrapolation of each other. We can actually predict the unfolding because it's going to be very linear. But when we're able, and I love what you said, it's not even, we don't even have to know how to do it. We just have to be willing to do it differently, willing to expect this, to allow spirit to use us. When we have and intend that openness or that direct connection, then the future becomes a field of infinite possibilities. That's Gary Simmons' teaching in Eye of the Storm. It's that then the infinite possibilities can move through us. And because Christ is in all of creation, what comes through is going to be intelligent. And it is going to emerge with a coherence that has a harmony to it when we're able to open ourselves up to that willingness.
And that, that makes me think totally of synchronicities. And synchronicities are something, everybody wants a synchronicity. And they want it to be so clear that you can't miss it. Now, there's a theory that synchronicities are happening all the time. I think it's Deepak Chopra that writes about synchronicities are happening constantly. Well, most of us, don't see that. But when I think about a genuine synchronicity, I think about what happened on Sunday, because, and I have to keep coming back to it because it was just so powerful. Often we don't get to see it quite so in quite technicolor like we did on Sunday. But it was the thing about the hummingbirds. And I don't know if this came out on Sunday, but the song order was moved. The original song order was changed around at the last minute because I don't even know the reason. I think Carol and Tina just decided this song would be better first, and then the second song, where she talked about the hummingbird, and you talked about finding the hummingbird on the floor, and you're staying in Hummingbird House. Now, whoa! I mean that's just kind of amazing, and I gotta believe. I mean, I don't know how many people know the story, but I met you back in a year ago in November. Is that right? When you came to visit the camp, or December. It was right around Christmas.
No, my one and only time here before I came in November to speak for the first time was Whitestone weekend.
Whitestone weekend. Okay, so it was the first weekend in January when Clive was here, and you came to see him. I'm sure you never heard of Unity of Tustin.
Nope.
Never heard of it, except that he was there, so you came. And I don't know what your experience, whether you got a bolt from the clouds saying, okay, Shara, this is your future. I don't think that happened, probably, but it was. And then it kept coming back and things kept happening. And I gotta believe, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but if I received that kind of synchronicity on my first Sunday as part of spiritual ministry team, that would really tell me this is the right thing, right?
Yes. It's extraordinary.
It's extraordinary.
We really let these experiences land in our heart. It's extraordinary. And when I was here Whitestone weekend 1 year ago, I could have never predicted or planned in my wildest dreams that I would be sitting in Hummingbird House right now having this conversation with you.
Right.
That is, and I'll say in my own personal journey, and it was this summer, and then things happened very fast. I commit my life to the unknown. It was very intentional. It was new. I like control. And how life met me has just been awe-inspiring and overwhelming when I sit with the greatness and of possibilities beyond what we have any idea. When we live like this. So this was, I can maybe bring this close. This is a little hummingbird that I found when I was plugging in my hair dryer and saw a gold medal of a saint, and I go to rescue Saint Benedict, and then I find this. And interesting, when I first picked it up, I thought it was a bird.
Oh.
So what I did is I have candles on that dresser. So I wanted to position it on the candle rim, almost like it was like a bird feeder or something. Mm. So I'm trying to position it, and it's not working because it's actually in flight.
Oh, okay.
So then I bring it close, and then I see it's a hummingbird. And that's the,
Yeah.
And I mean, how else is spirit going to talk to us? How else? I mean, there are a few different ways, but this is certainly one of them. And, we can't look for miracles in synchronicities, because when we're looking for spirit outside of ourselves, we're already off the mark.
Yeah.
But when they come, like, put them in your treasure box.
Yeah.
And the miracles I have experienced, I cherish them, because by nature, they can't be frequent or they'll become an addiction. But they are a wonderful way for what Fillmore would call the subconscious, what I call the basic self, for that part of us that simply responds to concrete messages.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful opportunity to get that part in alignment with the rest of us that is doing our best to serve our life for something greater than the ego, greater than self-interest, because we know it's being guided by something greater than the ego and greater.
And that, every now and then we need spirit to throw us a bone, right?
Oh, yes.
please show me a bone. And I have a book that I wrote, and in the book I talk about how those synchronicities, you just can't explain to somebody what it's like to have that awareness. And this one is a pretty good one in terms of being able to explain it. But I have some that wouldn't mean a thing to anybody else but me. And that's fine. It's such a resonant thing that you never forget. It just lodges in you, and you just never forget how that feels. I don't know if I'd become addicted, but it certainly is a feeling that's indescribable. When you get this it's a confirmation. It's a confirmation that is so sometimes needed, particularly when you've been in this liminal space. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, you were probably in a liminal space for a while, sorting, what am I going to do when I grow up, kind of thing, or other questions that we ask. What is my purpose? That is a big question for people, and it's a very humbling and also confirming feeling, synchronicity, that the right place, you're doing the right thing. Because sometimes otherwise you're just doing the best you can, flailing around. But I was pleased for you that you had that experience. So
no, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for recognizing the deeper meaning. That's what we look for: meaning, purpose, connection, belonging, service. How do we do these experiences? And being here, it's a definite shift in my life trajectory. I'm away from my family, 12 days a month, and to have that kissed by spirit You know,
Yeah.
even the little wink from my own mom. It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
sacred, very,
Very
very
sacred,
special.
and really, really speaks to, after a while you think, am I just making this stuff up?
You can't make this stuff up. That's when you
Yeah,
know that's when you know it's capital R real, you
yeah,
know?
that's right. It's capital R real. And I guess as Jesus said, for those that have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, and this is what it's all about. So thank you so much, Shara, for sharing all that with us. And I know we'll have many more conversations and many more opportunities. And we're going to have part two, I guess by the time this airs, we will have had part two. And we're going to figure out a way to get that out to people that were not able to see part one and part two. So we will, because it's very seminal what you're saying. It's very meaningful and really a template for our community. It helps to have someone coming in with new eyes that's looking at us from a different lens than, because after a while when you're in it, you just can't see it anymore. So.
No, I'm so grateful I'm able to serve in whatever way I can. Thank you for this conscious conversation. And I look forward to having conscious conversations with many, many people in the community as I learn and as I have my own journey of connection and belonging. And I'm simply grateful, humbled to be here and be part of this community. This is a amazing, dynamic community and a loving community. I'll tell you, Mary Jean, one of the hardest parts for me, I've received so much care and so much love and so many people wanting to make sure I'm okay. It's to really receive it and like, can my heart stand all of the goodness that I've experienced in this community? And I'm very grateful to be here. So thank you for this conversation.
I'm so pleased that that's been your experience. Thank you, Shara.
Blessings.
Blessings. It reminds me of so many things. We could have talked for a lot longer, actually, but it felt like that was complete for this time around. So Shara will be back next month, and she'll also be doing 2 services when she comes back next month. So we'll look forward to that. And before we close, I just want to encourage you to click the link up above there and make a donation to Unity of Tustin, your spiritual community. If you're being spiritually fed, which I think I made reference to this last Sunday we talk a lot about being fed spiritually and what that looks like, how it feels. And we so encourage all of you to participate in the flow of giving and receiving. So we thank you for your donations. And as we close with the prayer for protection, I just want to mention that Conscious Conversations will be changing the format as we did a little bit tonight. We will end with a song by Claudia Carawan, who's not a person I'm familiar with, but I've spent some time looking at her work, and she's a very powerful singer, and I hope you'll take a moment and listen to her.
Spread your wings and fly. You belong to the sky. Many wonders lie waiting within your mind's eye. And as you believe, you will receive. great clarity. Claim your destiny. Beyond perceived boundaries lies possibility. And as you
So let's end tonight with what I consider to be the greatest affirmation, prayer of affirmation, which is the prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Thank you for being with me, and I hope to see you next week on Conscious Conversations.
Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in to the deepest kind of love, to the sweetest kind of life. Get ready, my soul. Everything I've ever done, everything I've ever seen, everything I've lost or won, everything I've ever dreamed has brought me here to the present moment, here to a new beginning here, and I'm seeing life so clearly now. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in to the deepest kind of love, to the sweetest kind of life. Get ready, my soul. Is here I go, deeper, deeper, deeper than I've ever been before. Here I go, closer, closer, closer to my sacred source. Here I go, deeper, deeper, deeper than I've ever been before. Here I go, closer, closer, closer to my sacred source. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in into the deepest kind of love, into the sweetest kind of life. Get ready, my soul. Get ready, my soul.